Good morning, everyone. My name is
Go.
Jesse Johnson with the Johnson Center of Community Excellence. I am the president and CEO of the organization. I want to welcome you to our podcast today. You can learn more about the Johnson Center of Community Excellence by going to jcoce.org. That's jcoce.org. There you'll be able to find out more about what we're doing, and you'll also have an opportunity to donate. So our topic today for today's podcast is really on decisions, choices, rewards. The choices that you make can have a profound impact on your life. And so I just thought I'd open things up with a little bit of a story before we pass things on to our moderator, Tina Shade. This is a true story. And I had a friend that I used to go to get my hair cut from time to time. And, he left, and I asked another person in that same shop what happened to him. So, long story short, um, I was told that he's in prison. And I'm like, well, what happened? Well, how did that happen? Well, it turns out that there was a dispute between a bill. Um, my friend went and got into an altercation with this individual. They quickly, you know, devolved into a physical confrontation. And from there, turns out that they both lost their lives in two separate ways. So my friend had a gun on him, and that tussle turned into a gunshot. The person that he was involved in that altercation with died, and he, as a consequence, is in prison for the rest of his life. Now, there are consequences, there are also rewards, and we want to talk about all of that on today's podcast. So, with that being said, I am going to pass the baton over to Tina Shade, our Vice President of the Johnson Center of Community Excellence. So, Tina, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. How's everybody doing today? That means there's an answer to that question, right?
I'm
Everybody's
I'm
doing
I'm
good.
I'm good.
Mhm.
Awesome. All right. Well, my name is Tina Jade, and I am here to talk about decisions. I am the vice president of JCOCE and president of Summer Girls United for Excellence and Empowerment. So, decisions that we all have to make, and decisions can be life challenging or can be horrific sometimes. And just like the story that Jesse just gave us, we have three people here today, Thornell, or should I say two, Thornell and Pedro. These are two what I would call successful gentlemen. And when I say successful, and success can be measured in different ways, but I say successful because they're here with us today. They are, groomed in society as hardworking, and they both come from areas in which they could have made decisions that could have put them in a different realm in society, but they did not. So we have to think they were challenged with some decision making that ultimately the decisions that they made put them in the right space. So we wanted to just get some conversation going about some of the things that all of us are faced with that can easily turn around very quickly. If you make the wrong decision, you're around the wrong people, you're doing the wrong things, how you think through your decision making. And this is where we are today. So I want to introduce to you Pedro and Darnell this morning, and we're going to have a candid conversation and just hopefully hear some things and maybe some things that they encountered and that they were able to think through to come out of those circumstances today. All right, we welcome you too.
Welcome.
Let's start off with Thornell. Thornell, you was with us our last podcast, and we talked about growing up in the inner city. And I am sure most of us, for a period of time, grew up in the inner city as well, but exited very early. But Thornell, can you think of anything in your life in which you had to make a definitive decision that could have gone left or right, but you chose the latter? You're on
I'm
mute.
I'm sorry. I just took myself off mute. I I can think of a lot of decisions that I made that caused me to go make the right decision as opposed to the wrong decisions. But I think a lot of times what we do is we end up not telling the bad. So to steer away from what you said, I'll talk about a decision that impacted me long term that was bad. Myself and Jesse are brothers. Myself and Jesse both were in the Marine Corps. I think I went in before him, so I got a little seniority over him. And um, I wasn't happy during the time that I was in the military. And, at that point, I wanted to go home. And we had new command come in, and the new command had already been appraised of who the bad seeds, who were the good seeds. I was labeled a bad seed. Don't know why, but that's a story for another podcast.
Mhm.
But I was confronted by my first sergeant for something that I really didn't do. And at that point, he was trying to seize whatever opportunity he could get to throw me out. And in the spur of the moment, I made a decision that wasn't in my best interest, and it got me in some trouble. And that trouble has followed me since I got out of the Marine Corps in 1994. I'm saying that to say that a lot of times, particularly with Jesse's story, um, a 30-second decision can have a 30-year impact on your life. And a lot of times we're in the heat of that moment where we're often afforded the opportunity to make the right decisions, and more times than others we do. But you have to be very careful because again, that 30 seconds of arguing over money that was probably insignificant in the grand scheme of things, he has 30 years to think about, or the remainder of his natural life to think about how unimportant that little bit of money was. So yes, I've had a lot of instances where I could have made bad decisions, and I decided to make the good ones. But sometimes those bad decisions, as quick as they are and as instantaneous as they are, they can have lifelong effects. And
Yeah.
we really need to, in the sense of particularly talking to people and especially younger people, you know, I train in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I'm headed to a 2-day seminar right now. And what that teaches me is that it takes ego out of my decision making. Because a lot of times ego can steer you in the wrong direction. And sometimes you have to learn how to take a L. You have to learn how to accept the defeat. You have to learn in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu that it's not really losing, it's just the person's technique is better than your technique in that particular moment. And you start over and you move again. You don't pout, you don't get angry, you don't, throw a temper tantrum because, again, those bad decision makings, I mean, those bad decisions that you make in that instance, they can have long term effects. So, I just wanted to
Totally agree.
add that. Yeah.
So it's almost like that old saying, fight your battles. Know when to fight what battle. Some
Choose,
battles do
choose,
not
choose your
even
battle.
work.
Choose your battles
Choose your
wisely.
battle. Yes.
Right.
Choose your battle. I'm notorious for messing up cliches and sayings, by the way. But
It,
choose your battle, right? Because not everything has to be a battle. I can think of a million things in which I wanted to battle, and I just kept my mouth closed, which is very hard to do, by the way. Very
right.
hard to do. But I think that a lot of times we end up in these terrible situations and circumstances because we don't choose the right battle and we don't know when to fold them and just walk away. And instead, we fight the battle to prove a point, which can be a life changing decision. Just in an instant, we can do that just by making the wrong decision. I'm going to come back to you, Thornell, but I wanted to introduce Pedro and wanted to let him say a little bit about himself, just a little bit about his background, and then maybe tell us just something in regards to a decision you had to make, which could have or may have changed your life.
Well, thank you, Tina and Jesse. I appreciate it. And hi to everybody on here. Well, with me growing up, I know Jesse called it inner city. Well, we called it the projects. We
Mhm.
called it the hood growing up. Nobody called it inner city when I was growing up. But growing up, during those times in the Bronx, I grew up around the crack era, the New Jack City era, the Alport era, when everybody had making hard decisions on, trying to be fashionable, trying to do the right thing. What a drug dealer was the best thing going, at that time, right? With the fancy clothes, the jewelry, and growing up in the inner city, you got to make a decision coming up as a young teen, or even now these days, right? Because you got the rap music, you got the Gucci, the Louis Vuitton, and it looks cool to have all this money, right? So sometimes, when you grow up in this area, during that time, you got to make a decision, right? Like I was telling Jesse last week, growing up for me, a lot of my friends was drug dealers, right? A lot of my friends was, out there in the street, going out of town making money. But one thing I had was my dad, right? And my dad used to tell me, you can hang out with those guys, but you don't have to do what they do, and one of the biggest things, like I told Jesse before, that helped me out was a community center, right, in the neighborhood. Because that was like a avenue, a place where we can go to play basketball. It was mentors there that shows, hey, you could do other things without being affected by what's surrounded by you in the neighborhood, right? We had a lot of Jessies. Well, we had a few Jessies in the neighborhood, to start the community up, take us on fishing trips, basketball trips, baseball games, and and then when we came out of there, I had to face, the environment, the drug dealers, what was cool, right? What was cool, the bomber jackets, all those fancy things that people had, right? But I had to make a decision for myself. Either I go left or I go right, right? And going right was something that, my dad always taught me. He's not here today, but he say, you're going to be old enough to make your own decision, right? Like you said, that split decision, I call knee-jerk reaction, right? A knee-jerk reaction to cost the rest of your life or somebody else's life, right? Also put you in jail for a decent amount of time, 10 to 15 years, right? So these are one of the things that I've learned coming up, because my dad used to say, hey, you can hang with this person here, but you don't have to sell drugs. You don't have to, go rob somebody, because that was a big thing too. Everybody was robbing everybody, going on Times Square, robbing these people, but I never did none of that, because I always thought I was a leader. I was a leader, not a follower. And being that instilled from my dad, and see my brother working all the time, my sister working, going to school, going to college, it was something that I look forward to, right? It was something that I thought I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to be cool, right? And another friend of mine, Cornelius, his name's Cornelius, we call him Wild Man. He made the same decision I made, right? And it's funny is because me and him got the same path. I went into the military, and he went into school, to our school of art and design. It took him to the right. A lot of my friends that took the drug dealer path, a lot of them was dead. A lot of them end up in jail, right? And to this day, it's still the same way, right? It's still the same way. And I encourage everybody, to find that mentor, right? It's okay not to be cool, right? It's okay to be a nerd, right? I tell my daughter that all the time. It's okay if somebody call you a nerd. It's okay to be different. And that's the problem. Everybody want to fit in, but nobody want to be different. But it's okay to be different. It's okay to find that person, that's doing good things for themselves. If they're not doing cool, right? Because everybody want to be cool, right? Everybody want to be that person to have, a lot of money, right? To show that they got the designer clothes, But hey, both my parents worked. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had enough money to get by, and that made a difference for me, because I was okay with it. I know last week, and I look at the podcast, I forgot which one of you guys said it, was like, I didn't know I was growing up in the projects until about 16 years old. We had everything. I had everything that I knew I had, because my parents gave that to me. They made me feel comfortable where I didn't have to go out until I started getting older and realizing at that teenage years, wait a minute, these guys don't have this, they don't have that. These guys buying this, and we're buying that. So it's okay. It's okay not to be different. It's okay not to have. But sometimes, with a lot of youth today, it's some young adults, right? They got to find that within themselves, right? And sometimes I start with a parent, right? A dad or an uncle, right? Or somebody just playing that big brother, right? Or that big sister, right? Because it's easy to stray to the left when they don't have that direction, right? Because everybody want to fit in. And that's one of the things that I try to teach my daughter. I tell her all the time, because she came to me at one time and said, hey, they call me a nerd. I said, okay, that's good. Well, that's not a friend you need in your life. You know what I'm saying? because one day that person gonna be working for you, asking you for a job, right?
Yep,
It's okay not to be cool. You found cool in your own way,
absolutely.
right? So
That,
sometimes, I'm sorry, Tina, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Pedro. I'm sorry.
No, no, but it's okay to be different, right? It's okay not to be, the one that everybody likes. But after a while, it'll turn around because now you'll become the cool kid. Now you'll become the person that people look up to you because they see that you're different, right? You're not a follower, you're a leader as you start to grow, right? You make decisions. Now you're working, right? You're doing the right things. But that one split decision to go left, right? And at that age, like I told Jesse previously, we had a conversation, there's always that age around that young adult age, young teenage age when they like 12 and 13 years old, when they try to find their identity, right? When people in school
Peer
smoking
pressure.
and smoking weed in the back staircase, or trying to experiment with cigarettes and try to sneak off, drink. Like when I was growing up, it was the MD 2020 Cisco, that drink everybody drunk in the 80s and 90s, right?
Hmm.
Trying to sneak off and do something bad. I never did it, right? Because that's a decision I made, right? I call them gateway drugs, right? Gateway leads to
Yes.
alcohol, different things, right?
Yep.
So there's that age where people try to find their identity. They say, hey, I want to be cool or not be cool, right? When I was growing up, they say, hey, man, you going to the military? They thought that was a bad thing. But to me, I come from a family that went to the military. To me, it changed my life dramatically. It made me who I am today, right? It made me the person I am, and it changed my family life, right? It allowed me to do a lot of things for my family and my daughter. And I come from a military family, and it gave us a structure, and allowed, myself, even my family members, even my nieces, to see them all go to universities and graduate and be successful today, because of the decisions that my dad made, my parents made, to instill in us, to instill into our kids. So sometimes,
Absolutely.
it's like I said, my dad used to say, do better for your kids than I did for you, right?
Absolutely.
Right. And I think I'm doing it. And I think my brothers and sisters doing the same because, I graduated from a university, right? And then some of my brothers and my sister did, but not my other brothers. But it didn't affect how they raised their kids because all their kids grew up, and they're doing successful in their lives in universities, right? We could be that change, right? We could plant that seed in the inner youth to do better for themselves, you know.
Absolutely.
I
Something that
mean,
you said, and I didn't mean to cut you off,
are
Pedro,
you
but
up?
something that you said that I want to pinpoint because I know most of us probably went through this, and they call it peer pressure. I always called it, I hated that phrase, peer pressure. It's like just make a decision to pick and choose your friends wisely. That's what I always say. Pick and choose your friends wisely because the company you keep can also put you in a very, very bad situation. And something that you said that I found interesting was you chose to go left when in an era, and everyone knows that crack era, that hustling era very well. It was a big thing back in the day, that New Jack City era, and I love the way you put that, the New Jack City era. And when everyone wanted to be fly and part of and that fast, quick money, and that was the way to do it. But very quickly, conspiracy became a thing because of people choosing to surround themselves around the wrong people. Just because you surround yourself with the wrong group could get you in a bad put you in a bad position. You may not have done anything, but because you're there in that circle of people, it could have turned left really quickly. So I think it's interesting that you say you chose to go left, but some of the people you were around were doing the right, or vice versa, whichever the case. But I wanted to just emphasize how important it is too to choose wisely the company that you keep, because that can change your life drastically too. And you could be doing all the right things, but the people in your circle doing all the bad things, and that can make your life turn around very quickly. But I absolutely love both of your stories, both of you. I'm curious. I'm going to go back to Thornell real quickly because I'm curious. You said, and you didn't really emphasize, and if you don't want to, that's fine too. You said that your drill sergeant or the superior when you were in the military, who you had a feeling didn't like you too much anyway, um, basically you made a decision in some sort of conflict, it sounds like, with him, that then pretty much gave him what he wanted, which is another problem. When you are in a situation, it may have put you in a situation to then kind of give him what he wanted.
It
Do you?
probably gave him a little bit more than what he wanted.
Right.
It wasn't what he expected. Let's put it that way. Um, I'm an open book. I hit my first sergeant in the mouth. You don't do that in the military, particularly the Marine Corps. Um, it was during the wind down time from the first Gulf War. And again, I was a young kid, 19 years old, and he came into the unit. We had changed command. He came into the unit, and the outgoing platoon sergeant, who really had it out for me, um, put a bug in his ear. So when he came in, he already had his mind made up about who I was as a Marine, as a person, and he started setting little traps. And I knew there were traps. I knew what he was doing, but at this point, I'm fed up with the whole process. I don't feel like I'm getting justice for anything that I'm trying to do. And he did something, and I outsmarted him. Um, he tried to charge me with something, and when I go to see the battery commander, he added charges on, and then he forged my signature. And I'm like, I don't know. That's not me. I want to, in the military, when you have non-judicial punishment, um, you don't have to accept it. You can ask for a court martial. So I was being a smart aleck. I'm like, I'd rather take this to court. So let you argue out in court. So did that. The charges were dismissed once he got caught doing what he was doing, and he tried to bait me again, and he reinstituted the original charges with the additional charges. So now he's going to do the process. And I was just at that point, I was just fed up. But again, a split decision can have an impact on you years later. Here it is. I've been out of the military since 1994. I don't have any of the benefits that I earned. I can't get any of the benefits that I normally would be able to get the benefits had I continued to be a smart individual that I am and just out hustle him and outmaneuver him, then I would have I would have continued to win in that situation. But I let my ego get the best of me. And a lot of times in situations, particularly with young men, and young women too, but more so with young men, we get caught up in our ego. Our ego is saying, you shouldn't let that person talk to you. Our ego says that person owes you money and they ain't even going to give it back to you. Our ego says this person is being disrespectful. You shouldn't try to reason with them or talk to them or even walk away from the situation. You need to impose your will. And those type of decisions clash with good decision making.
Right.
And you have long term, issues. I go back to the story that Jesse told. I'm pretty sure that young man who used to cut his hair is thinking about how much money he could be making right now, still cutting hair, how many women he could be seeing, how many places he could be going. If he has children, he could be seeing his children every day and raising them going up. And because the money that was in dispute was probably insignificant, it was probably so insignificant, but ego got in the way. Ego, ego forced him to make a decision to cause it to get physical. And most people in physical situations, when they have a gun on them, can't fight. That's why they got a gun on them. And he probably was getting the best of them. So now you're getting the best. The person is getting the best of you. So instead of you being able to, like we do in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, tap and say, okay, you got me this time. We can go again another time. His ego is telling him, nah, you got to get the best of him. Now you didn't pull out the gun. You just shot him. You're going to jail. Your family can't get you any bond. They got to come up with money for court. You go to court. You get sentenced to a lifelong term. You've taken away somebody's family member, probably their father, their son, their brother, and all for what? Because of ego. So a lot of times, you know, with men, with young men, ego gets in the way and ego causes you to make those 30-second decisions that have 30-year impacts.
Can I say something? I know we're just about at time. I want to go back to 2 points. The first point is, you know, a buddy of mine once told me that he carried a gun for protection. Um, and so when he drove around, he had that gun with for protection. And what he told me later was, I had to stop doing that because having that gun on me was probably not something that I needed in, the circumstances that I found myself in, but it gave me a false sense of bravado, you know. That's one thing. But the last thing that I want to say is I think we all can say that we've made good decisions, bad decisions, and therefore by the grace, right? Because we could have all gone down different paths. There could have been decisions that could have turned out differently. I want to go back to decisions because even though folks may make decisions that may have long lasting impacts on their lives, other decisions can be made to make the very best out of that circumstance, to come back from, a situation that went the wrong way and still persevere, still overcome, still be successful. And it's all about making those types of decisions, even if you made decisions that may have gone down the wrong path. So, with that being said, again, we are at time. I think this is a good point for us to stop. Tina, you always do an amazing job moderating. I want to thank our guests, Pedro and Thornell, um, and definitely want to thank our producer, Anthony Lupos, who's doing a ton of work behind the scenes. Again, the Johnson Center of Community Excellence, please visit our website at jcoce.org. Learn more about what we're doing to change one life at a time. Thank you, folks. Have a great day.